As young people, we are one of the greatest resources available to the survival of our community. We stand ready and willing and hereby pledge our commitment to building skills, building lives, and building community. We will develop ourselves and those around us as leaders, remain accountable for our actions, and place important focus on our education, and strive to give our all each and every day. We are YouthBuild.
Those words, spoken by thousands of young people, serve as the inspiration for the Voice of Opportunity Youth podcast. Greetings, my name is Matt Fantone, and it is my goal to elevate the voices behind those words through this podcast. As the transition coordinator for YouthBuild of Greater Stark County in Canton, Ohio, I've had the opportunity to hear the stories, dreams, and challenges of young people within my own community and have been exposed to the fact that there are countless other young people like them. All too frequently, these young people are defined by their struggle and not their potential. Through YouthBuild, young people aged 16 to 24 are given the chance to become more than what others have labeled them. Through their own effort and grit, they define their lives and their futures. Today, in the first episode of the Voice of Opportunity Youth podcast, I speak with one of the students I have worked closest with. A graduate of YouthBuild of Greater Stark County, I sit down with 17-year-old Dakota Ferguson. Start things off, why don't you just tell me a little bit about, yourself and kind of what you were doing before you would come to YouthBuild?
Well, before I came to YouthBuild, and I was mainly just going to public school, McKinley High School here in Canton. I've been going to public schools my whole life, and really, once I started getting into those, my freshman and sophomore high school years, I just, started dropping off, and I just started, despising mainly public schools more and more, and I just fell off, fell out of the norm and dropped out.
What was the challenges you were facing? What was the things that were getting in your way to, have success in a regular school?
I'd say the main thing would be, a lack of motivation, a lack of willpower to keep going to public school. I mean, It was really just the environment I didn't like.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. And I guess, that, if you're not going to enjoy where you are, if you're not going to feel like you're welcome or you want to be there, that's going to be really challenging for you to continue to go.
I just kept going. I had some friends there or whatnot, but eventually I dropped off. I started skipping school, and then I dropped out completely, and I was just kind of lost, wondering what I was going to do for my life. And I think for 5-6 months, I just wasn't doing anything, just being a bum at my parents' house. And
so just completely disengaged at that point.
Yeah, essentially.
Not working, no school,
nothing at all. I mean, yeah, no, nothing at all. Just being a bum.
I'm going to assume a lot of video games, probably a lot of time on the internet, correct?
Yeah, a lot of just sitting in my room doing nothing, or doing something, playing video games, wasting my life.
Well, and how are you feeling then? What was that doing to you as a person? What was your psyche like during that time?
It was fine. It was just kind of that mentality of well, what I'm doing is fine. I don't need to further my career and education. But then eventually I kind of snapped out of that, and I was like, what am I doing with my life?
I want to know what caused that snap. What happened?
I honestly can't really recall. It might have been a mixture of my parents, what are you doing, with just some self-discipline telling me that I need to do something rather than just keep pursuing the path that I was.
Yeah, I think everyone faces this challenge, dude. You are not unique in it. And to have the ability to man, I don't have to do anything. I could see how that would be an alluring, option, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of times we don't want to do stuff, but you did decide to get up out of the basement. You did decide to kind of, start to put some effort forth and start to, change things around. So how did you come to Project Rebuild and YouthBuild? How did that happen?
Well, it's kind of a different story than I guess usually what happens. So, based off what I've heard, what usually happens would be like they would hear through their school as like some kind of rehabilitation or kind of, set your path straight. Well, I ended up hearing it through my brother, which actually didn't even like the program, didn't like YouthBuild. And so as he was like leaving it, I was like, well, I'm going to give it a try. It sounds completely like contradictory to everything like he was telling me, like, oh, obviously he didn't like it, so he would badmouth it. And so I was like, well, it can't be that bad. And I gave it a try, and man, I ran with it.
So, like, let's visit those early days. Let's go back to that. And your brother who had not found success in the program had recommended it to you, or at least told you about it. You decided to go with it. When you first came to YouthBuild, what were you thinking? What was going on in your head?
Originally, when I first came here, they said that they help get your diploma through this program. So, me being in the mindset was like, well, I dropped out of school. I need to finish school. A diploma was a perfect opportunity. I didn't have to settle with a GED, anything along those lines. So I was like, well, the main reason I'm going to go here is to get my diploma. And that was my mindset at first. And then as I started, progressing through the program, made it through my first month, 2 months, 3 months, I'm like, it started to click with me, like, this program's a lot more than what I originally thought it was.
No, I kind of always tell students that, regardless what reason you decided to come here, the fact that you came here is a positive thing. But like, obviously when you came here, you had to have felt that it was different than maybe traditional schooling or a traditional job. What were some of those differences? What were some of those things that made you say, hey, I do want to be here?
One of my earliest memories, I was when I was here, and because I got in around January, and I remember there on the house they were working on, they were cutting the footers on a Friday, which normal programming doesn't usually happen on Fridays. So they offered me the extra hours because they needed an extra hand, and I remember going there, and it was just like early morning, getting that done, and it was just kind of sat with me. I was like, wow, this program's really got a lot going on with it. It's really, really showing me like how much work they put in, and I just got to see like the other side for once.
So that sense of pride, that sense of accomplishment, that, hey, I went out and I did something, meant something to you. What do you think you would have been doing had you decided to not come in those early days? Had you said, you know what, I'll listen to my brother's recommendation and I'm just not going to do this program? Where do you think you would have went from there?
I had I had the will to get my diploma. I just didn't know where to start, so I was more confused than anything. So I feel like I would still be somewhere with a diploma, but I wouldn't have I wouldn't have gained the experience I gained at Rebuild. I wouldn't have learned what I had, learned, and I might not have been on like the same good path as I am now. I might have been like way further behind.
I'm glad you bring that idea up because I think that's interesting, and I think that's really probably what a vast majority of YouthBuild students are dealing with. Most people think, oh, young people, they're lazy, they don't want to do anything, they just want to lay around and do nothing. You had goals of, hey, I want to make sure I get this diploma, and I want to work, and I want to feel proud every day. You just didn't know what the avenue was necessarily to get there in front of you. And I'm glad that you found YouthBuild, and I'm glad that was, a something that could clear the path for you. And now all of a sudden, what seemed like an unobtainable goal, you now had steps in front of you of like, okay, this is how I can go get that goal. So, all right, so you made the decision, and, hey, I'm going to come check out Project Rebuild YouthBuild of Greater Stark County, and I'm going to engage in this program, and I'm going to be a part of this program. So once you had made that initial commitment and you came out and you saw this as something that you wanted to do, What was that experience like as a student? Like, where did from when you started to kind of when you left? What was that story? What kind of happened within those months?
Well, starting through the program as normal, it's 9 months split into three different sections, three different cohorts. On my first 3 months, it's kind of getting introduced, getting first initialized with your certificates and whatnot. And I don't think I finished school till about 5-6 months in, maybe a little less, a little more. So not only was I, going the full 8 hours a day, 4 hours school, 4 hours work, I kind of just was going with the flow, going with what the path that the program set, trying to get as many certificates and whatnot under my belt, trying to learn what I was going to do with my life, which I didn't really start to learn that till nearing the ending 3 months to 7 to 9 months, where I started working on my resume. I started getting everything wrapped up. And even after that, I remember the car ride I had with you, Matt. And I remember talking about what I was going to do, what job or career or further education I was going to pursue. And I just remembered not knowing, just dumbfounded on what I should do or what I could do. And I mean, I got a lot of great opinions and options and all that. But that's just when I ended up pursuing more towards of the AmeriCorps full-time member role with Rebuild. And I mean, I believe it's a great opportunity, and it has been a great opportunity for me to kind of learn what I wanted to do in life.
Well, I think that's really so important that you brought that up, and I think that's really, at its core, one of the greatest challenges I think all YouthBuild students face is, we're taking young people, and this has been true for a long time, but we take young people 16 to 24 and we kind of ask them, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Which is an incredibly difficult, answer to come up with. You kind of have to go through those years, at least in my opinion. What helped me is I was able to go through those years, try on a lot of different things, see what fit, see what did not, and then I was able to kind of, make a plan from there. But if you don't have the opportunity to try those different things on and to kind of get those different experiences, there's no way that you're going to accurately pick something. It's like throwing a dart up against the wall and saying that's where I'm going to head for vacation. You've got to be able to try on different things. So you mentioned that you are a full-time AmeriCorps member and still here at Project Rebuild for another kind of chapter of this story. What has that been like? What have you been doing, and how has it kind of been a continuation of your programming time?
Since I've transferred over to the AmeriCorps role, mainly what's happened is I essentially transitioned from student to staff. That way I can help them out with what they need, with their programming. And that way I can also get even more leadership roles and what it means to be on more of the upside of the program. And it's just good knowledge. I say it helps with just kind of seeing things from the other side rather than just from the employee. You get to see it from the employer's side.
Sure, and I think that's why having you in this role is very important to our organization, because you are somewhere in between student and staff, and you've been able to experience it kind of from both sides. And, I think that gives, you a really great, view on things where we can only see things our way. Students are definitely, in a different seat than we are. So the fact that you've been able to kind of occupy both seats in a short time frame, I think it gives you a unique perspective. So over, the time that you've been here, whether that's been, working for us or as a student, what are some of the things that you feel proudest of?
Through the program, I ended up doing online schooling with Penn Foster, and I mean, I could have done it a bit faster, but not to brag, but yeah, I ended up like doing like cranking through all like what is it, 21 and a half credits. I had 3 credits transfer over from my first 2 years of school because they didn't accept some of the credits.
Right.
And I ended up doing the other, 17 and a half credits within 6 months.
Well, I think we really have to, and I know you're trying to humble brag right now, but I really do want to kind of pat you on the back for this, because let's look at what happened. Let's look at the 6 months from when after you started YouthBuild. You now sit there as somebody with a high school diploma and was able to accomplish 18 plus credits within 6 months. Let's look at the 6 months prior to when you came to YouthBuild. You were just, in the basement playing video games all day. And I mean, like in that year, 6 months plus 6 months is 12. In that year, man, I mean, you were able to take your life, which was definitely stagnant, which was definitely, facing a lot of obstacles, and whether they were self-imposed or circumstantial is kind of beside the point. You overcame those obstacles, and in a year, you were able to go from, I dropped out and I have no idea what I'm going to do, to I'm now a high school graduate. So no, dude, that's definitely an accomplishment and a half. It is. But okay, so I know there was, as well as, your diploma, probably a lot of other things you were proud of. Yeah. But I'm also sure that there was a lot of challenges that you faced. Like, as you look back at your time as a student, what were some of the things that, were tough for you to get over, and how did you overcome those obstacles?
Well, a few things come to mind when I hear obstacles and challenges. A few of them being like inner struggles. Like, I have really bad time management skills. So for example, some nights I would be I never had any schedule in life. It was just kind of like, all right, I work at this time, I leave at this time, the rest is whatever. So some nights I would stay up like extremely late for no reason. Then I would have like, 4 hours of sleep. And then the next day I'd be like, all right, I'm tired. Let's do it. I wouldn't really, I mean, I would show it, but not in like a cranky way or like a sleep all the time way. It would just kind of be like, yeah, just rough day.
Just being exhausted.
Yeah. And that really was a struggle for me, and is a continuous struggle I still face each, waking moment of the day, is my like inability to plan out my days sometimes. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just me, but
I can assure you, my friend, that it is not just you. I think that's very common for, number one, a lot of people, but certainly number two, a lot of young people. That time management skill, especially had you not been taught that, had you not kind of, had somebody that was, saying get out of bed and this is what you have to do and you got to get moving. That's not something that just inherently happens. So no, I don't think that struggle is unique to you or anything like that. But I will say you have been able to overcome that. I can remember as a student, my first impressions of you and kind of, those early days with you. And it was that thought of, man, I know this kid's a gamer. I know he's down there in his basement. He's just going to be up all night till 4 a.m. playing video games. And I'm sure you still are sometimes. But he's just going to be, up all night, and then he's going to be falling asleep in my class. He's not going to be paying attention. He's not going to be doing stuff. But through the months that kind of went by, and certainly by where we sit now, you have been able to overcome those things. So once again, I do think there's at least a little bit of a pat on the back there. So like, obviously this experience was different than any job you had, any schooling that you had. When did you kind of know that, hey, this is working for me? This is something positive. And like, was there one moment, or was it just kind of an accumulation of things where it was like, hey, stuff's going right, and I'm starting to do well? Like, what was that moment of realization for you?
Well, I would say it's a little bit of both. I would say it's an accumulation of those little or of those one moments, I'd say. I remember one of the first times I was like, I just had that, hey, this isn't this isn't too bad, was within my first 2 weeks of the orientation, essentially. It was, I want to say, like a week, maybe like a week and a half in. I think we were doing like CPR, first aid training. It was one of those times when I just first got in and I was just sitting down. I was listening to what was going on, and I was just kind of sitting there like, I think I can make this work. I think I can go with this. And I mean, it didn't really start to hit me. That feeling didn't really sink in until, months later, where I can see like the final stretch to getting my diploma, and I'm just like, it's really just been like a life changer, this program. Like, and not only has, I've seen it impact my own life, but I've seen plenty of other cohorts and plenty of other students come through here, and see them have some, maybe not in the same aspect or the same way I did it, but they had the same experience and the same chances to go with it, to go far with it.
Yeah, I think that, there's no one story of how students come here. There's no one path to success once they leave here. But I do think you start to see some common denominators, and I think the longer that you're around, the more you start to see those similarities. And, I can definitely point to you and say, like, hey, man, this is a student where I feel like it's been working. And hopefully you can serve as an example to those students that you're kind of dealing with now. So let's start to look at the future, because I feel like we visited the past a little. I feel like we visited the present a little bit. You mentioned that right now you are a full-time AmeriCorps member, but that's a closing window. So what do you think is going to be happening in your life as you finally decide to transition away from Project Rebuild and move on into the next chapter of your life?
I guess I could start here. I'm pretty interested in the field of IT, and I mean, there's just a lot that goes into it. It's like saying, carpentry.
Sure.
There's a couple certificate programs that go through with that. One of them being the CompTIA Plus. I would like to try and get some of those IT certificates under my belt, and that way I can learn it. I want to learn as much from those as I can. And by the time I'm done with my AmeriCorps term, I'm most likely going to pursue like a vocational college, like a trade, and see what I can get from that, because I feel like a trade is just a very valuable thing to have under your belt, and I feel like I can really set myself up for the future once I do that.
Yeah, and I mean, IT is just going to become more and more important as we move into the future. As far as I can tell, we're not going backwards in technology. It's only going to become more complicated, more, it's going to take more manpower, more brain power. So good, man. I think that's an excellent career choice for you, and I think you have set yourself up pretty good with the groundwork of it. You're very smart, you're very quick to learn, you're very hardworking. So I think that's definitely a field that would make sense for you. How do you think that, not just your experience here, but like, how do you think YouthBuild can help you achieve those goals? Like, what is our role as an organization to kind of help you take that next step?
Well, the encouragement encouragement alone is almost enough to help me push myself. But YouthBuild has done a lot to set me up. Like, a lot of the connections and a lot of the networking that YouthBuild has brought to my network has been far more valuable than any money that I've gotten through the program or any certificate that I've gotten, because really that networking is just one of the single most important things you can build in your career.
Yeah, it's an undeniable huge part of you being able to move forward, and hopefully by exposing yourself and learning about people who you might not have been able to have met prior to your experiences with YouthBuild. If nothing else, I hope it shows you that you deserve a seat at the table, and you deserve to be a part of these conversations, and you deserve to, have that success, and that, that you're capable of that success. Because I'll be real, I think that starting things out, when I can look back and kind of remember the early days of you, I don't think you knew that you were going to be able to be this kind of person. I don't think you knew that this success was something that you could achieve. And to see that happen, I think that really is kind of what our program is all about, and kind of at its best, what we're supposed to be doing with our jobs and our careers and with this program. So one of the questions I want to ask you is, from kind of, the perspective you've had both as a student, as a staff member, as somebody who's been involved with this program for a couple of years now, what does the general public need to know about YouthBuild? Because not a lot of people know what this program is. They don't know what it's offering to the country, to their communities, and things like that. What do you think people need to know about this?
One of the things I feel like people should know is just, or about YouthBuild at least, it's just how much of a good thing they're doing for their communities and the people that they're affecting, and how much it's actually is changing people's lives.
What positive things, outside of what have happened in your own life, what positive things have you seen with other students, with other people who have been involved with this program?
One of the main things I would say is personal growth. Like, I feel like that's just one of the most valuable, and I don't mean like my personal growth. I'm saying like everyone, individual personal growth of like students that have been through the program, and just people being enlightened to what it's about. Sometimes you just see like the glow in their eyes of like, okay, this is really a thing. This is really happening. And I'd say that's one of the greatest things right there.
Being able to witness that moment is special, dude. I feel like I've had the opportunity to do so numerous times, and certainly I think the more and more you're involved in this program, you continue to see stuff like that. There's undeniably going to be some students that are listening to this across the country, involved in different YouthBuild programs, who are either A, very early into their YouthBuild experience, or B, possibly coming to the end of their rope, where it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I can't do it. I can't show up for another day of work. What advice would you give to YouthBuild students who are facing these challenges and who are looking for these opportunities? What would you tell them if you could say something?
One of the biggest challenges I see is a lack of motivation or a lack of willpower. And no matter how hard it seems life is, or no matter how bad the times may or may not be, really all you gotta do is push through it. There's no way it's gonna stay bad, or I mean, if you just keep a positive attitude and give it 100% every single time, not just once or twice, I feel like you really can. It really changes like the outcomes that you'll see.
Yeah, I think that consistency, I think that message, I think that positive attitude, those are all huge parts of what we try to accomplish here, and I think what you've been able to accomplish, and hopefully that you will be able to continue to push forward and spread as you kind of take these next steps in your life. Dakota, I want to thank you so much, man. This has been a fantastic interview. It's been enlightening. It's been great to get your opinion on things. So, on behalf of the entire organization, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on here.
A young man that in the course of 1 year was able to go from dropping out of high school to walking across the stage and into the working world. The story of Dakota Ferguson proves that when given the opportunities, youth are fully capable of creating positive momentum in their own lives. YouthBuild works to expose countless young people like Dakota to those opportunities. The Voice of Opportunity Youth podcast was produced in the Project Rebuild studios on the campus of YouthBuild of Greater Stark County. Find out more information at projectrebuild.org. Our podcast music was provided by thepodcasthost.com and Alitu, the podcast maker. Find your own free podcast music over at thepodcasthost.com/free music. For more information about YouthBuild, visit youthbuild.org. And to all that listened and to all that support young people, thank you.